I'm Claudia, I'm 25. I'm queer and undocumented. I am also a community activist, a non-traditional student at UTEP, and I function currently as a director of community affairs for the Office of State Senator Jose Rodriguez. The work that I do there, I do a little bit of community initiatives and also work with Spanish media. So I live on the west side of El Paso. Our district office in El Paso is located downtown. So my commute's around 20 minutes depending traffic. I usually come in, have coffee, set up a couple of meetings with community members. I work on healthcare, veterans, and LGBTQ issues at the office, and so what that looks like is that around once a month, I get to staff and liaison those committees for the senator. I get to represent him at events, and then when I'm done with my 8 to 5 work, which is the work that I do at the senator's office, I also function as a leading member of Soñando Juntos, which is a United We Dream affiliate here in Utah. DACA is a Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program that President Obama rolled out through an executive action in 2012. It essentially protects dreamers or undocumented youth like me from deportation and allows us to receive a work permit every 2 years. So through the DACA program, I was able to, one, be protected from deportation, and two, fulfill my higher education. So I'm still a student at UTEP because, as you know, DACA students typically don't have the access to financial aid that U.S. citizens do. And so it's a lot harder for us to access higher education because of the costs. A lot of us either get private scholarships or pay out of pocket. Personally, I've been paying for my education out of pocket. So with the DACA program, I was also able to establish myself as a young professional in El Paso. I have worked for organizations like Battleground Texas, doing the Wendy Davis campaign in 2014, and also with organizations like Texas Freedom Network, which is an organization that, through their Texas Rising program, is touching millennials all across the state and moving them to action. Trump is a man who began his campaign by referring to Mexican men as rapists. He began his presidency by imposing an unconstitutional travel ban, and throughout his presidency, he has proven time and time again that immigrants are no longer welcome under his administration. And so, because of Attorney General in Texas pushing for him to resign or discontinue the DACA program, Trump gave in to that fear. What that has done is just really moved a lot of people to action, but it has also placed a deadline to Congress to take action. So now more than ever, it is imperative that Congress passes a comprehensive legislation like the DREAM Act that protects all of us from deportation, provides us with a legal pathway to citizenship that we deserve, and doesn't attach our dreams with the price tag of a senseless wall or a border security measure or border security measures and or the separation of families. So the DACA program was discontinued on September 5th of this year. The administration allowed DACA recipients whose work permit were going to expire by the March deadline. They gave them 1 month to renew those applications. So a lot of the people, for example, a lot of the groups like Las Americas locally moved in partnership with the Mexican consulate to make sure that all of the people who could apply would apply for reapplication. We did see a huge number of people applying for that renewal. Permits like mine, for example, weren't eligible for renewal, so mine will be expiring in February of 2019. Beginning March 6th of next year, if Congress doesn't take action, we will see these DACA permits expired permanently. So right now, I'm hopeful that Congress will take action. In traveling with the Border Dreamers Alliance, we know there's a lot of support for dreamers. We just want to make sure that our dreams don't come at the price tag or attached to a price tag of, like I said, border security, the separation of families, and or a senseless wall. Should March 5th come and Congress take no action and my DACA permit expires a year after in February, then I would be subjected to deportation. I'm not from Mexico, I'm actually from Venezuela, and so for me that would mean going back to a place that I haven't been to since I was 8 years old when I arrived here in the US. It's a foreign home, foreign land for me. Definitely not the place that I grew up in, and not a place where I feel like I would be able to get around as easily as I do here. So I think that there's a lot of power in sharing our story. Whether out of sincere or cynical motives, we have seen politicians really paint the border as an unsafe place and refer to immigrants as criminals, and we know that's simply not true. We live in the safest community in the country because we do welcome immigrants, and so there's a power into telling that story. I think that particularly in UTEP, there's even more need for us to be telling that story and for us to resist these kinds of rhetoric and these kinds of policies that aren't good for our community, because we are the university on the border. We have a unique experience when it comes to the immigration conversation, and we can't be that community that changes the narrative about immigration. So we've been doing a lot of, through different organizations that I collaborate with, we've been doing a lot of direct action events to increase visibility on campus so that students like me, who are probably DACA recipients or maybe undocumented or have a friend or a family member who are undocumented, can become aware of what's going on and can become active. There's so much power in us telling our stories because it focuses on people and their power versus a number, right? I'm not just one out of 800,000 DACA recipients. I'm an immigrant, and I have a story to tell, and so it's really important to share that. There's a lot of unity in that message. Of course, that carries on a huge amount of power. I think it's also very important for immigrants like me to encourage one another to share these stories, but doing so in a way where people feel comfortable, feel safe, and in an environment where they know what the repercussions could be of sharing that story. I have worked with organizations like Education Not Deportation to bring in all these other progressive organizations who support immigrants into providing trainings for local people who want to get involved, and also meeting with officials like Dr. Natalicio and sharing our concerns on behalf of the student body. I think that what I would say is that Congress will take an action. They have to take an action, but it is up to us to make sure that they do. We know that Congress has not been very active when it comes to comprehensive immigration reform. They have kind of just dropped the ball really on immigrant issues, and so it is up to us to help us to come together and share a narrative and really share the narrative as a dreamer from the border. I think there's so much, our narrative is so much different than the ones of the rest of the country. I want to say that they're also not alone. There's a lot of organizations locally who are ready to help and provide the support that they need and provide them with the education and information that they need to make sure that they are active and aware and organizing in their communities and their neighborhoods. I think that Dr. Natalicio's letter sends a clear message that UTEP welcomes immigrants and that UTEP has historically been a sanctuary campus for people like me. However, when it comes to advocating for the DREAM Act and comprehensive immigration reform, I think it's never enough. I think there's always something more that you can do to encourage your congressmen, to encourage our elected officials, and to encourage other community members to become aware and supporters of the movement. So there's always something more that you can do. We are in conversations with her to finding ways in which we could work together with their administration to continue providing that sanctuary place for immigrants like me. I think that she definitely has a strong voice. I think a lot of students look up to her leadership, and that is exactly why organizations like Education Not Deportation and Soñando Juntos have been wanting her to be a bit more vocal about her stance on the issue. We know that she is one of the top influential people in the world, and so because of that, I think she has a responsibility to be a leader in this movement. And what that leadership looks like could be in many different ways. And we hope that she continues to work with students like us to finding ways into creating UTEP into a welcoming, continuing having that sanctuary campus here at UTEP. So I was born in Caracas, Venezuela. I moved to the United States when I was 8 years old along with my single mother to pursue a new life. And I essentially adopted the values of El Paso's community as my own. I went to elementary school here, middle school, high school, and now UTEP. And so I have lived in my entire life, for the most part, here in El Paso. And I love this community. I feel like I am American in every single way, and all I need is that piece of paper to let me continue my dreams. I also feel as though because I live in El Paso and I've been blessed to live in a border community, I know the repercussions of immigration, of harmful immigration policies, and I know what it does to communities like El Paso and communities that are important to the economy of Texas, and a community that is also important to the economy of this country.
So this isn't a question from here, but do you feel any at all connected to Venezuela? And like, do you feel like if you were to go back that you would be able to like sort of like not assimilate, but like be integrated into their culture again?
So a few weeks ago, 50 Dreamers from the border went to Washington D.C. and our message was very strong and clear. Yes, we are American. Yes, we do want to pursue our dreams, but no, it does not come at the price of border militarization. Does not come at the price of the separation of families, and no, it does not come at the price of a senseless wall. I felt like I could walk as I was walking the halls in Capitol Hill, finding the meetings and finding the offices where I was going to be speaking to staff and senators. I felt as though I could move quicker or be more in tune with the surroundings at Capitol Hill than I could at my own home country in Venezuela. I have not been to Venezuela since I left, since I was 8 years old. The political climate has completely changed. It is a country that we know has the worst economy in the world. It's a country where there's a lot of insecurity, political instability. And so no, quite frankly, I feel like my life would be at risk going back to Venezuela. I do say that I have a birth that will always belong to Venezuela, but I have a heart that reads El Paso de mi corazón. And that's something that I will always carry, and that's the resilience that I like to share through my story and through my narrative. Right, so like I said, Trump is an individual who began his presidency by referring to Mexican men as rapists. He is a president who began his term by essentially imposing a non-constitutional travel ban, and time again has proved that he is not a friend of immigrants. Every immigrant is under attack under this administration, and not just immigrants, but people in the LGBTQ community, women, and others. Just last night, we had Wendy Davis come and speak with us about the lies that are being turned into laws at the state level, and it's no different in Congress and under this administration. I feel like they are really pushing fear or creating a fear that doesn't really exist. Whether it be talking about the bathroom bill or whether it be talking about abortion access and or immigrants, they are creating this boogeyman, essentially. And we simply know that it's not true. So our job as activists and as community members and as organizers is to make sure that our communities are educated in the reality of the situation, in the real issues, on the real facts. For example, SB4, the Sanctuary Cities Bill, the Show Me Your Papers law that was signed into law on a Facebook live feed by Governor Abbott and has proven to be one of the most racist pieces of legislation in modern Texas history, is now a reality, and it has been proven to be unconstitutional so far in different provisions, within different provisions of its law. It's affecting our campuses, it's affecting our communities, it's affecting so many people here, and it was simply and it was passed into law because many people, like Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and President Trump, have said that immigrants in border cities are unsafe and that immigrants like me are criminals, and we know that this is not true. So that's why it's important that we share the true facts, and we share the fact that El Paso is the safest community in the entire country because we welcome immigrants. And so that is a message to carry, is that these lies have a huge impact, and that if we don't become active, and if we don't come out and vote, and if we don't encourage those who are eligible to come out and vote as immigrants, come out and do it, then we're simply not going to see the change that we need to move forward. So like I said, I think every immigrant, documented or not, is under attack under this administration. Members of the LGBTQ community are attacked. Women's health is under attack. So many things that we call intersectional issues are under attack. And so yes, I definitely think that there's a lot that our communities need to work on to make sure that this administration doesn't continue passing policies or advocating for policies that are not good for our communities. In fact, they are harmful and they don't make our communities any safer. I want to say that immigrants like me are your friends, your family members. We are students, we are teachers, we are advocates in the community. We work and serve elected officials like you. I myself work for State Senator Jose Rodriguez here in El Paso, and we are American in every meaningful way, and we are part of the American future. And I want to know, and this message goes to not just Trump, but to every elected official out there, you are going to be held accountable for all of the actions that you are taking and for all of the decisions that you are making in regards to immigrants and women and the members of the LGBTQ community. There's elections coming up here in Texas, and next year we're going to elect a new governor, a new lieutenant governor, and representatives across the state. And so I know for a fact that immigrants like me, whether we are documented or not, are going to make sure that those elected officials are held accountable. Some of us might be eligible to vote, so we'll make sure that we are coming out to the polls. And those of us that are not eligible to vote are going to be encouraging our friends who are eligible to vote to come and be part of that process. It's so important, and it's very important also for youth, who account for 1/3 of the electorate, to hold all of these people accountable. So I encourage community members to contact elected officials like Congressman Pierce, who represents Las Cruces. I also encourage community members to advocate and to call the offices of Congressman Will Hurd, who is the representative who has the district that has the most part of the border. So his vote is essential to ensuring that the DREAM Act gets movement in Congress. Also, it sends a clear message that the border is a safe community that welcomes immigrants and that does not want border militarization as a trade-off for dreamers and their future. I think it's also important to contact Texas Senator John Kernan and also Senator Cruz, whose offices you can call and contact to ask them to co-sponsor the DREAM Act, which is a bipartisan piece of legislation that it would impact 3.5 million immigrants like me.